Hello, BookTube. We're continuing with my useless 2023 library tour. I'm going through all the books in my collection, and as I go through them, I'm changing them, so they are not anymore all the books in my collection, and more are coming all the time. But we're going to do this, we're going to continue with this wobbly, strange wooden bookcase that I would replace if I could. And it should come with a content warning, because this is all canonical classics. That's all that you're going to be hearing about in this video. So let's take a look at what we have here. We'll start with, we're going to do two shelves, I think, today. So, because I'm sick of this bookcase. I don't like it. I never trust that it's structurally sound, so I want to get rid of it. I want to get done with it anyway for this little tour, and then we'll move on. We'll finish up, actually. So we have Transwise books here, and also a book out on the shelf. The book out on the shelf is this box set, this box slipcase, Barchester Towers. Quite a nice volume, and I like box sets because they are their own structural utility. Then we have the Transwise books. Let's get them done. Okay, so this next one that we have is something we've already seen with 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is Pride and Prejudice in one of these Penguin hardcover classics that are quite nice, that got sent to me. Well, I got a lot of these from Penguin back when they were pumping them out. And these have the Coralie Bickford designs on them, and Pride and Prejudice, of course, is one of my favorite English language novels. Even so, I mean, I was very happy to get them from the publisher, but I don't imagine that this would ever be the Pride and Prejudice that I would pull down and read, because these designs will come right off the book if it's roughly handled, and I roughly handle things, so I like having it very much, but I'm not sure that I would ever use it, which is maybe a reason not to have it. Okay, then we have two paperbacks. This is the two paperbacks of the same book. This is the Modern Library edition of The Sorrows of Young Werther. And there is a man crying, a young man crying on the cover. And here we have a W.W. Norton translation of The Sorrows of Young Werther with a young man who hasn't got around to crying yet, but he will. He will end up like this. So I have both of these things, two different versions of this, plus others. I have the Essential Goethe that has the whole of Sorrows of Young Werther, and I have the Penguin Classic of Sorrows of Young Werther. But then we've got a modern library. Oh, this is a cute little thing. This is a cute little modern library of the Bostonians by Henry James. That I just like the format. I don't have much Henry James, so I think I found it for free, so I grabbed it. This next one is One World Classic. They used to send me lots of books. I don't know that they still make books. They did a really adventurous line of reprints and translated works. This is the Satyricon of Petronius, translated by Andrew Brown. Still has the slip in it from, I think, 2011? 2010. So, quite a while ago, before we were talking to each other. Then we have this big trade paperback of The Lives of the Caesars, the 12 Caesars by Suetonius. This is the Robert Graves translation, of course. But this thing is bigger. It's bigger, and it's heavily illustrated. So, if you want that sort of thing, I find that nowadays, I don't want that sort of thing. Nowadays, the last 3 times that I've wanted to consult Suetonius in any way, I have not wanted to deal with a translator. All of those were for Otho, a character named Otho, one of the emperors in the year of the 4 emperors. For some reason, I keep going back to Suetonius' life of Otho. And every one of those times, I have gone straight to Suetonius rather than deal with an English language translation, even one as interesting as Robert Graves's. So I don't know that I need many English language versions of Suetonius. Probably I don't need this one. But that's what's going to happen in this library tour, is that I'm going to slowly but surely eliminate lots of books. Then we have the last of the Transwise books here. This is the Wayne Rebhorn translation of Boccaccio's Decameron in a trade paperback, which has blurbs by the Dallas Morning News and Stephen Greenblatt, and Publishers Weekly is on the cover there. Kirkus also liked this. And on the inside is me reviewing it for the Quarterly Conversation. I'm not sure the Quarterly Conversation still exists. But its then editor, Scott Esposito, allowed me to a nice, generous length to write about Boccaccio, and to do a little bit of my favorite thing when I review a new translation, which often isn't possible if you're writing for a jobbing editor who's got a normal book section, and that is to compare a few translations. Look at a few of the stylistic choices, show you translator 1, translator 2, translator 3, the same passage, and show you what they're doing. I find that that's really helpful for the reader, but that takes space to do. So anyway, so that's why I have that one, because it's blurb. I'm blurbed on the cover. Then we have this bigger This is Harcourt Brace Jovanovic. This is their bigger Scarlet Letter, illustrated by Barry Moser, who does the illustrations all throughout. I just love them. This is the version of the Scarlet Letter that I would want, even though Barry Moser decides that Nathaniel Hawthorne is a zombie. He is one of the Walking Dead. Don't know why he would make that decision. Hawthorne could be boring, it's true, but he wasn't a zombie. He wasn't actually undead. And we have a cute little hardcover of the Sherwood Anderson Reader. Not one of my favorite authors, but I loved the look of this volume, and I don't think I'm ever going to see it again. And it's as much Sherwood Anderson as I want, so I was happy to have it. Then we have Courage Books, which is the hardcover imprint of Running Press, which we've already seen. That did that big paperback of Shakespeare, that big paperback of Jack London that we saw in a book haul. And here they did Mark Twain. This is the hardcover, Mark Twain. Big fat thing, really, really nice volume. It has lots and lots. It says the unabridged Mark Twain, but of course this doesn't have all of Mark Twain in it. And this quickly supplanted. There was a big book throughout most of the 20th century, a chunk of the 20th century, called The Family Mark Twain. Some of you of a certain vintage may remember it. It was by far the most popular one-volume abridged Mark Twain, whole of Tom Sawyer, the whole of maybe Pudd'nhead Wilson, then bits and pieces from everything else. This supplanted that in my mind as the best Mark Twain anthology. And Courage Books wasn't done. They came out with a volume 2 because to do just more of this, because this was really popular. And I've never seen the Running Press edition of these. I've never seen the unabridged Mark Twain in paperback. Not once in the wild. Not once. So I have these as sort of yet more Mark Twain. Mark Twain is scattered all around this room. Then we have Modern Library Giant, an old Modern Library Giant of the poems and plays of Robert Browning. And I guess that's supposed to be Browning himself on the cover there, on the fainting couch. I don't really know. But this is a big, generous selection of Browning, so I'll always take that. Then we have Everyman's Library. This is their 2-volume Bible, the King James Bible. You've got just a very stately design here, the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's just one of the many, many, many Bibles in this room. I'm not even sure that we're done with Bibles for this bookcase. Then we have something we've seen before. We saw this with Herodotus. This is an old Barnes & Noble classic. Once upon a time, Barnes & Noble, the American bookseller, got into the racket of reprinting canonical classics. And before they decided to do their cheap paperbacks, that are cheap in both senses of the word, they did hardcover runs. We saw an ornate Moby Dick, but they also did just a normal hardcover run. I wish that I had grabbed them all. I never see them out in the wild used. This is their version of Vanity Fair. It's just a lovely stately cover, a lovely minimalist design, the deckled edges. I love these, and I only have 2 of them. I have Herodotus and I have Vanity Fair. And they did Pride and Prejudice. They did a whole bunch of things that I wish that I'd found. Okay, then we have the Peviar and Volkonsky War and Peace in a trade paperback. Their famous translation of War and Peace. We have Helen Vendler. This is the Art of Shakespeare's Sonnets. This includes all of Shakespeare's sonnets, and also lots and lots of textual analysis and a CD of them being read that I don't have the tech to play. I don't have the technology to play that CD, but I suppose I could. I think one of the old MacBooks that I have in the tech cabinet has a CD tray, and that MacBook works. It's an original, one of those old, very old white plastic MacBooks, one of the original run of them, and it still works just fine. So it's just not, it's not light. So that's the only reason I don't use it is my daily MacBook. It does everything that I want to do, and it has a CD tray, so I could listen to those. Okay, then we have this lovely Book of the Month Club set of the Divine Comedy. This is the Alan Mandelbaum translation with, again, illustrations by Barry Moser, who's an artist I really like. He has, look at that. Oh, man. There are illustrations all throughout here, and you've got the Mandelbaum translation. Is this bilingual? No. Oh, yes, it is. Yes. And in a neat trick for bilingual editions, the original language is on the right side, in both senses of the term. That doesn't usually happen, because that's where the eye goes right away. So that's Dante. I don't know how many more Dantes there will be in this tour. Oh, no. You're kidding me. All right, well, this is another copy of the Peviar and Volkonsky War and Peace, only this is the hardcover. Why I need the trade paperback and the hardcover of the same translation, I do not know. Then we have this lovely old edition. Who did this? Aventine Press. This lovely old edition of Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. Just a purely aesthetic thing, purely a pretty thing. It doesn't have any annotation at all, but it has the big, generous pages and the really solid binding and the decal edges. And that's what I want. As I mentioned when we were doing the Penguin Classics, that's really what I want, is to have urtext. Sure, absolutely. To have all of these things as ebooks that are imperishable and unchangeable on some e-reader, but also to have all of the Penguin Classics of all of these things with really good introduction and notes. Those are fine. You want that as a backstop, but if you really love the work, which doesn't apply to Sherwood Anderson, but it does apply to all the rest of these, if you really love the work, then I always want my favorite edition, the best, nicest edition that I have seen. Not necessarily a first edition or anything collectible, just aesthetic, just my own aesthetic. And that Leaves of Grass definitely applies. Oh, and here's another one. This is another example. This is an old Norton hardcover of Sarah Orne Jewett, The Country Appointed Furs and Other Stories. And this is lovely. I think this is absolutely lovely. It's a really good bookend with this Sherwood Anderson. Back when American book classics would sometimes have cover designs like this. I really like it. It's far more appealing to me than the Library of America volume for this author. So when I saw it, I grabbed it. It will be perfectly fine to act as my Sarah Orne Jewett volume. Now we're going to move on to the next shelf here. We're going to move on to the next shelf. We'll do the Crosswise books first. We have a battered copy of The Yearling in these old Scribner Illustrated Classics. These have N.C. Wyeth illustrations. I found an old copy of this. I don't know if it was this one or another one. I see these Scribner Illustrated Classics at the Brattle quite often, and I usually don't get them like this. Usually not. Usually I wait until I see one that's in good condition with a dust jacket. Like, for instance, there's a block of them right now at the Brattle for $5 a piece, I think. Just a huge block of them, including the Scottish Chiefs, which I do not have. But I saw it, and I thought, no, I want this with, the dark green paper dust jacket. I want it in better shape than this. But this, for some reason, it just put a spell on me, because I know that the reason this is so battered is because a kid loved it. That's why it looks like this. And that just sold me. Absolutely sold me. Then we have Chaucer. This is Sheila Fisher's translation of Selected Canterbury Tales, which is a little bit deceptive, because in this volume, she's doing all the Canterbury Tales that you will know. She's just leaving out, fragments and guesswork and whatnot. This is a terrific volume. Is this also W.W. Norton? Yes, it is. W.W. Norton and I go way, way back. I love them as a publisher. In fact, they're one of the only publishers left. Once upon a time, you used to be able to look at the book publishing schedule in America and go by publisher. Well, I'm a Harcourt Brace Jovanovic man, or I really like Bennett Cerf and Random House. And the reason you did that is because each publishing house was different. They had a different feel to them. They were obviously not the same. You didn't even need to know. You didn't need to look at the publisher's colophon on the spine to know what it was. W.W. Norton is the only holdover to that in my mind. They're the only, W.W. Norton and their imprint of Liverite are the only mainstream non-academic press that's sort of like that, where they do reliably good stuff. I know that I'm going to like a W.W. Norton book, almost certainly. The only academic equivalent that I can come up with is the Belknap Press of Harvard University Press. But it's rare. Once upon a time, it wasn't. But anyway, this is a Canterbury Tales that I can heartily recommend. What are we doing here? We're doing Crosswise books. And how are we doing for time? Oh, we're fine. Okay. Then we have this big hardcover of the collected stories of Sean O'Phail, these are so good. I have many, many collected short stories in this room, and many of them are by Irish authors because they're the best. This is fantastic. Then we have another collected short stories. This is not by an Irish author. This is Eudora Welty in this lovely, who did this? Mariner did this lovely trade paperback. I once had the big brown hardcover of her collected short stories, and I got this in the mail from the publisher. When did I get this? 2019. I got this in the mail from the publisher, and at first I put it on the shelf next to that big brown hardcover, and then I thought, well, why would I do that? Why would I keep both when one is ugly and the other is not only pretty but really flexible, really durable? So I just kept this. It's just a better book, and that is the Transwise books. Now we're going to try to. Oh my good. This first book on the books proper is Leslie Klinger. This is his annotated edition of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, we saw this on this channel. This came out last year, the year before last. When did you come out? Yeah, October of 2022. And it's the usual thing when it comes to an annotated edition. There's pictures and notes along the side, and then the text in the main block. And it's totally unnecessary. You don't need an annotation of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but I really enjoy it because I love the book. Then we have this big edition. This is a book that's had many, many, many editions. The only reason I have this edition is because I really like it. That's all. It's just aesthetic. This is Seven Pillars of Wisdom by Lawrence of Arabia. And this big, lavishly deckle-edged thing. I think this has black and white photographs buried in here. Yes, well, a picture of a portrait, but there are lots of other things in here too. Just a big, generous book when I feel like spreading something out on my lap and reading it without electronics. Then we have Complete Shakespeare. This is the best one-volume Shakespeare. This is the second edition of the Riverside Shakespeare, the big brown book. It is amazingly, amazingly good. A monument of scholarship. Every play has tons of notes. There are tons of notes in the back. Tons of great introductory work to each play, each poem, everything. This is just incredible. Just an incredible work of scholarship. After this, Shakespeare scholarship started to go insane because academia started to go insane. So after this, I think the Riverside Shakespeare that was made 10 years after this has 3 different Hamlets, 2 different King Lears. It's utterly ridiculous. Where the editors of the volume in question are ostentatiously showing that they have abandoned their responsibilities as editors and are just sort of chucking everything at you. And the fact that an approach like that is done for students, it compounds the wrongness of it. So, but the brown Riverside Shakespeare, I found that one dirt cheap. I have occasionally found these things out in the wild in perfect condition, dirt cheap. This brown second edition Riverside Shakespeare by Houghton Mifflin was, I think it's Houghton Mifflin. Yeah. It was hugely popular in schools. So there are copies out there, and it is the one-volume Shakespeare to have. I confess, when I want to not to check on something, the provenance of some phrase or whatever, but actually just to read something, I go to my running press paperback Shakespeare, which has no notes at all. I confess. But we all have our favorite books like that. Okay, then we have a bunch of illustrated volumes. Are these all Scribner illustrated? I think they are. This is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. The weird cover there. This has weird pictures throughout. I don't think that Wyeth ever actually did an illustrated 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This is illustrated by W.J. Aylward. And I'm not finding many illustrations here, but I'm not missing much. I don't think he ever did it. I don't have all the ones that Wyeth did illustrate. He illustrated the Scottish Chiefs. He illustrated the Scribner edition of Michael Strogoff, which I don't have. But I have a lot of them. Like, for instance, here's Kidnapped. These big, ratty deckled edges and tons of Wyeth artwork in here. This is just such a great volume too. This is one of the older ones. Good Lord, when the paintings were still covered in onion skin. Just gorgeous Wyeth illustrations all throughout of Robert Louis Stevenson's Kidnapped. Then we have A Boy's King Arthur. And this is what I'm talking about. This is what I usually wait for. Something that looks like it just came out of a bookstore. I don't know if these are periodically reprinted in bookstores. I don't know if they still are. But this has, look at that, just incredible. This has Wyeth illustrations all throughout, and it's in perfect condition so that I know that it will last a while of heavy beating. Then we have more Robert Louis Stevenson. This is Treasure Island, the most famous of all of these Scribner illustrated editions with great end papers. Just wonderful adventure story by Stevenson. It's much more than that, but we'll give him his due. Then we have my favorite Robert Louis Stevenson. This is also N.C. Wyeth. This is The Black Arrow. Believe it or not, I know it's heresy to like this more than Treasure Island or Kidnapped or David Balfour or even Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but I do. The heart wants what it wants. I wonder if I can easily find a picture. Oh, look at that. Very brooding. Very wonderful. I have ebooks, of course, of all of these things, but something about this is just the thing to have. Then we have Last of the Mohicans, N.C. Wyeth. This is James Fenimore Cooper. I think that for this series there were 3 of these. There are the end papers. There's Natty Bumppo. I think for Scribner's there were 3 James Fenimore Cooper volumes. I have only 2. I really have to look online and see if there's a complete listing of these things. Probably there's a complete visual listing that would show me what I'm missing. I have The Last of the Mohicans, and I also have The Deerslayer, also NCY. Also just a beautiful production. This is a big, wonderful book. But I think they also did, I don't know, The Last of the Mohicans and The Deerslayer, but I think they did one other. I know it wasn't The Prairie. Maybe The Pathfinder? Maybe it was The Pathfinder? Well, I don't know. I will wait. The Brattle will provide. And then a copy of Robin Hood by Paul Cheswick, also with NC illustrations. Not a book that's known today, unlike Stevenson or even Cooper. But this was once upon a time the sort of go-to version of Robin Hood, of the Robin Hood stories. And I do like that. I would never pass it up if I saw it. Then we have, oh my, a bunch of Dumas. We have a bunch of Alexandre Dumas. What are we doing for time? Oh, we're doing fine. So we have 20 Years After in the Lawrence Ellsworth translation. These are fantastic. These were done from Pegasus Books. And I had the pleasure to review a couple of these. I don't know if it was, I don't remember off the top of my head which ones I reviewed, but it was a great deal of fun to do. Then we have his big, fat Three Musketeers with the deckled edges, big, generous thing. I don't know if this is out in paperback yet, but this is the translation of the Three Musketeers to have if you don't have any French. Then we have The Red Sphinx, a huge volume in the Musketeers cycle. This I did review. I don't think my review is in here. But this I reviewed for the Christian Science Monitor, I believe. Oh, no, I reviewed this for... who are you? No, I did. I reviewed this for the Christian Science Monitor. Nice, long review. Lots and lots of fun to do. Dumas, that is really, I mean, Ellsworth went through the periodicals and the publication history in order to get and cobble together a great book. What is this? Oh, what are you doing here? I think this happened once before. I must have moved you here. It's a battered little photograph. Those of you who are new to the channel, those were my girls. That was Lucy and Malin. If you go to the very beginning of this channel, you'll see them in the videos when they were very old. That's when they were very young. Oh my, there are my girls. I miss you both. Okay, well, I don't know what that's doing there. Let's just move on here. We have the last of these Ellsworth things, Between Two Kings, which came out in 2021. And I'm really hoping that we soon see Lawrence Ellsworth's The Count of Monte Cristo at 1,500 pages. That would be great. Absolutely great. Then we have this, an old version of War and Peace. This is yet another version of War and Peace. This is the Constance Garnett translation, and when I originally got it, it's this big hardcover here. When I originally got it, it was ugly. It had a scratchy pencil sketch of Tolstoy on the cover that made him look like Gandalf. I think I hauled it on this channel, and I decided to change that completely, just put my own artwork on it. So I put an appropriate picture on the front, and I put an appropriate picture on the spine, and just left Tolstoy and War and Peace, which is all I need, so that I have this volume. I have a nice, big, generous Constance Garnett volume, which is good. Then Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition of The Metamorphosis and Other Stories by Franz Kafka, with the original illustrations and the deckled edges and the French flaps. Obviously, this does not belong here. I have a Penguin Classic wall. We're just going to shove that across. And finally, we'll finish up at 25 minutes with this big volume from Knopf of John Woods' translation of The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann, the greatest novel of the 20th century. And in this big, stately edition that I had once upon a time, and then I got rid of it. I sent it away to somebody and just waited. I just waited. The battle will provide, and it did. Eventually it did. So there you go. That is a whole bunch of canonical classics. I'll leave a note again in the title of the video, a warning, a trigger warning, that this is all canonical classics. If you're not interested in these things, that's all you're going to get in this video. And that finishes this wobbly wooden bookcase. So we're going to move on somehow. I don't know how, but somehow we're going to move on to the next bookcase in this room. In fact, it's so oddly positioned, and I don't have a functioning tripod anymore. I just have a duopod. I broke one of the metal legs on my tripod because apparently I'm from the planet Krypton. The duopod isn't going to help with the next bookcase, the last bookcase in this room, because of the way it's positioned. It's blocking a blind corner, which I use bookcases to do. And actually, you can see right here, this bookcase. The reason it's at an angle like that is because it's blocking the 90-degree angle of a blind corner. Nothing would go in that angle, so I just blocked off as little of it as I could with a bookcase. Well, I did that in the room's other corner, and it's really awkward. I can't think, off the top of my head, I can't think of a place where I'd put a camera. So it might be that for that last bookcase, I have to do what other bookshelf tours have done on BookTube, and pull those books off the shelf and just pile them on the fainting couch and talk about them there and then put them back. I know that doesn't have quite the spontaneity of a bookshelf tour in situ, but I don't know that there's any way around that. And that will finish this little book room. And once this little book room is finished, I should warn you ahead of time, I'll warn you a couple of times with that last bookcase. Once this little book room section of the library tour is finished, the library tour is going to stop for a little bit because this has been chaos. Chaos has followed in its wake. So I need to totally rearrange this room. I need to make good on all of the promises that I made in every shelf along the way. And then I will resume the library tour, and we'll just do the same for the other rooms in Hyde Cottage. But anyway, that's a few days off, maybe 2 days off. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.